It's all yours.
Okay, hi everybody. Thank you so much for coming today. I'm Jenny Collins. I work at SUNY Empire as the OER Scholarly Communications Librarian. Apologies, this is my second day. The title is new to me. And today we're going to be talking about synthetic media. And in particular, we're going to be talking about how synthetic media is made and kind of how we can recognize it and why that's important, both in the context of an information literacy classroom and also in the context of just everyday lives. So I think I was a little ambitious with my number of slides. Let's just get going. So as an outline, we're kind of going to do the introduction. We're going to talk a little about ChatGPT because I feel like we have to. Synthetic media in and out of the classroom. I'm going to show you some practical demonstrations of what this looks like, ID and debunking, continuing education, and essentially my conclusion is please educate yourself and your students on how to find this stuff because it's cropping up more and more and more, and it's becoming more sophisticated. So as our introduction, so synthetic media, you probably know it more, have heard about it more as a deep fake is what it more often goes by. But it's an umbrella term that's used to describe images, videos, voice recording, fake documentation, all created with computers. So typically we say that it was created without human hands or without human creativity and intervention. And this allows us to distinguish synthetic media from things like computer-generated CGI in movies, which is created by vast special effects teams, professional photoshopping, and things like computer animation. These are all considered like human artistic endeavors. Nope. No, it doesn't like it when I click that button. So as I said, you probably know this more as the deep fake, and that term first appeared on Reddit in 2017, relatively recently. And at that time, it was it was used to describe pornographic face swapped images, mostly of celebrities. You may have seen something in the news about many of these recently have been deep fakes of Taylor Swift, who might be actually our best chance at getting some legislation passed to police these videos. And the technology has rapidly evolved to include things like voice mimics, which are being used widely to defraud the elderly, videos of politicians and other major figures. So deepfakes are everywhere. So when I'm saying synthetic media, like I said before, it's an umbrella term. So it's covering a lot of different things. And it does also include generative text like ChatGTP. But primarily, we're going to be looking at things like deepfakes and voice swaps when we're talking about synthetic media. So beyond ChatGPT we talk a lot about, but the main thing I would say about ChatGPT as a synthetic media is it allows for the intentional generation of false sources. If you feed ChatGPT enough information in one direction, I'm just going to use the political spectrum as an example, all of its responses will start leaning in that particular direction. Uh, ChatGTP can generate what in synthetic media is called a hallucination, which I think is a really nice word for a lie. So in ChatGTP, a hallucination is the unintentional generation of false sources. If students don't know to double check these sources, it can facilitate a deeply flawed understanding of information literacy, and this extends to the workplace and then extends to the general world. So how synthetic media is made, this is kind of the technical part of the talk, so we will just get it out of the way. So the first stage, it's a three-stage process to make these. So the first thing, and this is mostly about video, so deep faked video, is you have deep neural networks or DNNs. And these networks, which are typically assembled from data from brokerage houses, and a brokerage house is just the central point that buys your data. So Meta, Facebook is a data brokerage house. It collects massive amounts of data on its user base and then sells that to create DNNs or keeps that data to create its own DNNs. So what happens is these networks basically get all of this raw data, and then there's an algorithm that analyzes and learns the different angles of an individual's facial profile, and then creates a map, which you can see in the image of Mark Zuckerberg, and overlays these features onto the subject using similar features as an anchor point. So those little dots are anchor points. And my soapbox here is, please stop participating in like facial recognition games or memes or challenges like Twitter, which I won't call X, constantly has these things that are like, post a video of yourself from 10 years ago, or like post a video of yourself looking up at the sun. All of these are data brokerage ways to get you to show different angles of your face, to download your face into these DNNs, and then make it very easy to collect facial data and feed these DNNs more information. So don't use them. The second step, this is kind of the most important one, is generative adversarial networks. And how I would describe this as, it's a series of cat and mouse games meant to detect the elements of deep fakes that make them more obvious and fix those issues to avoid detection before the video is released. So essentially what it's doing is the cat is creating an image, and then the mouse is saying, oh, I don't know, that looks a little weird. And they're talking to each other to try to determine, okay, how do we make this as legitimate looking as we possibly can? I've also heard the analogy of like artistic forgeries. So that's always an arms race between the expert in discovering the forgery and the forger themselves. And then finally, once it's gone through that adversarial network, then it becomes a software application issue. So there are tons of apps and websites that exist to allow the average user to create sophisticated deepfakes with little effort or technology know-how. Once created, the deepfake can be released into the wild. Also, a problem is once detected on places like YouTube and Twitter, those companies have publicly stated that they will not be removing media, and X or Twitter has said that they will also not provide any warning that this is a fake image and that they have discovered that the images or videos are synthetic. So essentially the software applications are talking to the DNNs and they're talking to the adversarial networks, and then they are taking all of that data and allowing a user-friendly interface to send it out into the wild. So this is just an example back when Donald Trump was on Twitter. So this is from May 23rd, 2019. This is a video clip that was also played on Fox News of Nancy Pelosi just stammering and appearing to have a stroke episode on television. Uh, I don't believe Donald Trump knew that this was false when it was tweeted. But at the time, the company said, yes, we know it's false. Yes, we know it's damaging. No, we will not be providing any warnings, and we won't be taking any of this down. So then it became the impetus on the viewer to try to determine, oh, well, this looks strange. Am I going to believe this or not? So then we get to implications in the classroom. So I personally think, and I know this was the situation with me early in learning about this, that students and faculty are largely unprepared to encounter synthetic media in the wild. Um, Sources for papers, debates, etc., can become suspect, especially when those sources are image or video based. I had a student in a history class who was doing a presentation on the oh my gosh, I apologize. Was doing a presentation on the massacre of Black Wall Street. And the video clip they were using was a historian who was expressing that it wasn't necessarily a racial motivated incident. And there was all this evidence to prove that. The entire video was actually a deep fake that had been generated and placed on YouTube, and YouTube had declined to remove it. And in speaking with the student, it became clear that the student legitimately thought that this was a accurate source that was reliable, because the subject of the video is a person that they could Google, and it said that they worked at a particular university. That was true, but this person never made this video. This video was a deep fake that was generated using both a voice cloner for that scholar, uh, and a deepfake video face that matched the scholar, which all of us can anticipate is very scary. Uh, Also in the classroom, I feel like we have a very heavy focus on chat tools. Um, and chat tools are very important, and the issue of like plagiarism versus accessibility versus just all of the issues involved in chat GTP are very important, particularly in a composition classroom. But I think for other disciplines, we need to have more awareness of these deep fake sources. And then beyond the classroom, so I've included these photos of Kate Middleton. I don't know if anybody else was engrossed in the Kate Middleton saga that went on for a number of months. But beyond the classroom, there's been heavy evidence that many medical papers are being written by ChatGTP, which is then creating waves about professions and false information being widely accepted. The Lancet recently had to issue a series of retractions because papers that they had published were written by ChatGTP using hallucinated sources, hallucinated information. Deepfakes also pose a significant threat to an educated populace and to the democratic process. I had the video of Pelosi before. I have another image coming up of Donald Trump surrounded by a series of Black voters. If you don't have a lot of time to analyze these images and you just see them as in passing, this can build up um, a trust in certain materials or a lack of questioning certain materials that can actually be pretty deleterious to the democratic process. We also have threats of poor automation and its effect on industries. There's this idea that we're all going to be replaced by AI. That may be a threat down the road, but I genuinely do not believe, hopefully I don't get pie in my face later. I don't believe that any of the current AI tools, even deep fake tools, are capable of human thought to the level that automation is possible. But it's important to consider. It also works to create a general mistrust of information at a time when search engines and information seeking is more difficult than ever. Google has recently teamed its search with an AI generator. And I don't know if you've tried to do Google searches lately at like a higher level, but Google results have deteriorated significantly since their integration because there's just no system of checks and balances for true information versus untrue synthetic information. So this is kind of what I call the fun part of the presentation. So these are images I've had on my slides throughout the presentation. And some of these are real and some of these are synthetic deep fakes. So I just wanted to invite people to kind of come on camera, or you don't have to be on camera, but on mic or in the chat, and just try to identify like how many of these are fake, which ones are fake. You didn't have a lot of time to look at them. But if we could just take a minute and do that, I think that could be interesting. So I guess let's start with, so this is a picture of Angelina Jolie making an interesting face. I guess we'll start with her. So by show of hands, who thinks this is a real image versus a deep fake? Okay, yep, Lynn said fake. Lynn, you have nailed it. This is fake. This is a synthetic image where the other person in my first slide, the man in the lower corner, showed that he had enough anchor points in his face that he could pretty reliably make himself look like Angelina Jolie in videos if he wanted to. He's actually an individual who has an Instagram where he just shows how easy this is to do. The next image we'll do is how about this young boy over on the left-hand side wearing the black t-shirt? Okay, so Cynthia guessed real. I also guessed real. This is a fake. It's a deep fake. The only indication I found for that is where his neck is meeting his head. You kind of have this strange shadow, this sort of cross, but I actually found that one to be the most difficult to identify. This guy on the right, he's a fake. He looks kind of airbrushed. He's got this fuzziness around him, which is a way that you can tell. This jogger over here is also fake, which I thought was interesting because it definitely fooled me. I usually go to do things like count the fingers. She has the right number of fingers. Her smile looks real. The shadows are accurate. But really, one of the only ways to tell was this guy behind her is super blurry. And also, he doesn't exist in the space between her hair and her neck. This other family at the same marathon, they're real. Good for them. This photo of Martin Luther King and his family having dinner is real. There are many faked images of Dr. Martin Luther King. This image of Donald Trump with a group of Black voters that his campaign put out, you can kind of clearly see this one's pretty amateur. If you look at his hand, there's a weird Photoshop line between his pinky and his ring finger that humans don't have, to my knowledge. And then finally, we've got this black and white picture on the left, and that is also a real image, though initially I myself thought it was fake. Thank you for participating in my little exercise. But having done that, let's talk about how to train your brain to see deep fakes. Now, in this image, I have created the top line are all real news correspondents. The bottom line are all taken from deep fake videos of those same correspondents. Now, these videos were created as part of a project by the Associated Press to kind of educate journalists on like how easy this is. But part of the thing is just trying to train your brain to recognize these. So some techniques are good, but techniques are always changing. So hands used to be a dead giveaway. It used to be that no synthetic media could handle what the human hand looks like. They're kind of complicated. Now that has been largely fixed, but not all the time. So always keep your eye out for extra fingers, fused fingers, weird webbing, weird lines. Uh, Also, you can usually tell because there's significant blurring either around the face and nowhere else in the image. So like the face will be blurry, but from the shoulders, there's nothing blurry. Um, like that photo of the little boy, you can see uneven skin tone. And also the face can become very blurry when an object interacts with it. So if somebody goes to like rub under their eye or move their hair, things can go kind of out of control because the anchor points don't know what to do. Unusual movements or blinking. This can be difficult because people who are not neurotypical might not have traditional patterns of blinking or might not blink as much or might blink much more. Nervous people might blink more. But I've seen a couple of synthetic media videos where the person is not only not blinking, but there's this very sort of inhuman dead-eyed stare that goes along with it. So poor lip syncing, Lynn mentioned this, that she's seen this before. If the words do not match the mouth or the mouth movements are very strange, that's typically indicative. Also, inconsistent light between the background and the foreground, or just anywhere in the photo. If the lighting looks strange or inconsistent. And then my ultimate thing, when in doubt, seek a secondary source. So the Pelosi video was easy to debunk only because the real clip of her talking exists and was being publicly made available on other news networks. So if you see a video of somebody that looks really strange or they're saying something very strange, there's one of Mark Zuckerberg saying that they're going to take over the world and like invade. You can just check. Just try to seek a secondary source that supports that. And then, when in doubt, deep fake detection tools do exist. Some of them cost money, some of them are available free of charge. Deep Detector currently has a 93% accuracy at identifying synthetic media. It's primarily used for video and images. It's less good at voice mimics. Deepfake Proof is a helpful browser plugin. I really have gotten a lot of use out of it. It's a browser plugin. It's used primarily by journalists, but it is available for just anyone to use. I suggest educators use it. There's also AI voice detection, which is there to allow you to upload sound clips, and then you can receive an analysis on the odds that the clip is synthetically generated or if it's real. And then there are new tools popping up every day. People are aware of this as a problem, particularly journalists, and there are efforts to combat it. And then on my little soapbox, advocate for new laws. I don't believe that individuals should have to constantly be watchful and determine whether something is synthetic or not. Politicians and particularly corporations have a responsibility to pass and enforce common sense laws and regulations and terms of service surrounding all types of synthetic media in public spaces. House.gov offers great ways to get in touch with your representative. And they also offer like pre-generated emails. So you can mostly have it pre-generated to say, like, I want to support this issue. There's this law pending about it. Um, yeah, because I just don't think we're going to get social media companies in particular to look into this. There was an interesting thing like 3 days ago where somebody in a Facebook parent group asked the group, like, okay, I have a kid who's special needs, but a high achiever. What kind of schools in the DC district would be really good for that kid? And an AI generated parent responded and was like, I have a kid that matches these exact descriptions, blah, 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 blah. And they were like, oh, you don't sound like a person. And it was like, no, I'm an AI, but I have a child. Don't worry. My advice is great. And Facebook was like, we think this is a great feature. So the other thing is you can test your knowledge and know your competitor. So detectfakes.kellogg.northwestern.edu, which is very long, has a quiz of over 300 images where you can test your knowledge of deepfakes versus real images. This can also be a really interesting activity for students. They don't have to do all 300, but it's very interesting. And also moondisaster.org is an interactive film about the moon landing, and it's meant to assist people with identifying and dispelling synthetic media myths about video in particular. It's very glossy, it's pretty entertaining. It's also a good activity for students, I think. And then we've got blogspace.papersource.com, very long 2020 guide to synthetic media. This guide is from 2020, so it's slightly outdated, but it's still a great comprehensive list and description of the most popular and easy to use synthetic media programs. So thank you for listening and be treated to these photos of horrifying hands, all created by synthetic media. So if we have any time for questions or anybody has any questions or comments, thank you so much for coming and please let me know what your questions are.
That was cool. Do you think that you could put the links to the slide just before this one into the chat? Is
Yes,
that something that you could do fairly easily?
I can do that. Um,
And,
And I did see that Abigail had a question. So a paranoid question, maybe. I think paranoia is warranted. How many of the deepfake detection tools can guarantee they aren't using and selling that data? So the way that you can guarantee that is, unfortunately, I'm one of the people who likes reading terms of service, but if you read the terms of service presented for one of these programs, typically in the service block of text, there will be explicit guarantees that data brokerages are not being used. I know that like the word of a corporation seems dubious at best, so I don't blame people for being leery of those. But especially the tools that I listed, they've been out for a number of years. I'm just grabbing those links for people. They've been out for a number of years. They've had high usage, and they also have the support of people like the Associated Press and other organizations who I think are fairly reliable. Where did my window go? Okay, grabbing those links. And it is just scary. It's it's sort of a new frontier. And I know when I show students tools like Deep Detector, oh goodness. Lynn, for some reason, it's not letting me access my Gmail, but I will send the links along with my slides.
That would be wonderful. Thank you.
That works. But yeah, it's a terrible, strange new frontier. I had a communications class I worked with a couple of weeks ago, who we actually had them generate their own voice clone videos. And those are also, I didn't focus on those as much, but those are pretty scary. There's a lot of scams going around to defraud the elderly, where somebody will voice clone like their granddaughter or their grandson's voice, and then play it into the recording saying like, oh, I'm in jail in Florida. I really need help. Can you help me? It's a wide frontier.
Are there any other questions for Jennifer before we wrap up the recording and head off to our next session? That was fascinating. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you everybody for coming. It's an important topic. Thanks for letting me get on my soapbox.
I'm going to have nightmares this evening.
Oh no.
I'm sure about it.
I was hoping to avoid that, but I understand.
Oh, maybe not, but
Well informed is better armed than not being informed. I will say that.
true. Very true. Well, thank you very much, Jennifer. It was enthralling. Appreciate your participation today.
Yeah, thank you everybody. Go see some of the other sessions. They've all been great.
We do have some good ones.
Yeah. Thank you again, Lynn.